Hi, this is Charlie Mato-Toyela from BlueBearFlutes.com and Blue Bear Arts here on Facebook and YouTube, and just wanted to bring you another video. It dawned on me that I had shown you how to make the bear flute block that we use on a lot of our flutes, but we get people that ask for flute blocks of every type and kind you can imagine. So I'm going to show you how to make a new one today, a wolf flute block. I have made flute blocks that look like everything from chihuahuas, lizards, loons, Sasquatch. I've got a friend that is actually starting to make Sasquatch flutes, and I'm helping him out with some of the flute blocks on that for right now. But you know, we've got flute blocks of every type that we make, and I get people asking me to make new ones all the time. Today's the first time I think I've made an otter flute block to go on one of my customers' flutes. But what I'm going to show you today is how to make a wolf one. The wolf one, when you download the picture off of our website, it will print out with several different sizes, and if you decide that those sizes are wrong, it's really easy to go back in and crop them and resize and whatever you need to do. Most printers actually have a way that you can do that without even opening a piece of software, but this is what we'll be using, and if you want to come over and take a look, I'll show you where we go next. Okay, so one thing I forgot to mention is that we're actually making this video from our new flute making workshop, which is kind of nice. And of course, we'll be using this workshop as background for a lot of our new videos making different types of flutes. So anyway, something that no one has ever seen inside of before is my little box of animal patterns. These are real typical ones. Here's my little raven block. Here's an owl that we use. Here's the Sasquatch I mentioned. There's a turtle that I like. Here's a heron. But anyway, there's lots of different blocks that we get requests for. These are the ones that I get, you know, more than 2 or 3 requests for that I usually make. So just to show you a few of them there. Here's an eagle one that I use a lot. And unlike you guys printing this out today, I'm not one that normally reprints something. If I have this and if I need a smaller version of it, I might go in and trace it out or what have you, and then I'll come back in and I'll just trace out by hand, freehand inside. So you can see what we're going to do. This is actually my little wolf pattern. Looks a lot like the original. It's just what I settled on. But this is the one that I usually use when I carve out a wolf flute block. I'll just place it on the paper and trace it out. That's if you're doing more than 2 or 3 of these. If you're only doing 2 or 3 of them, this is the easiest way. Carbon paper costs about $1 or $2 here in the US. You can get it from just about anywhere. I think there was a time in my childhood I found it at a gas station. But carbon paper is really easy to use. You don't have to have it. If you're at home and you're making one flute block and you think, gosh, I sure wish I could do this, well, don't worry about the carbon paper. You can either press down a little hard on your image that you're tracing, or if you really want to get technical, you can come back on the back side of it and do like we did when I was in school and just do this number until it's completely covered in graphite, and then come back and trace it out. I use a carbon paper. Usually it's a little bit more clear image, but you're going to see nonetheless how this guy here is going to turn out. Just line your paper up with your piece of wood however you need it. Pick out the size flute block you need to make, and I don't always show you guys my exact techniques, but if you notice, this is the corner of the wood up here. You've got a lot of wasted material. I usually do it like this so that my flat edges line up. That's one less cut that I have to make, and also may save a little bit of wood in the outcome. So I'm going to show you what we're going to do here. Just trace this guy. It helps if you sand the wood a little bit before you begin this procedure, because otherwise you may be running into some bumpy grain. And as I've showed you before, you can come up with your own flute blocks the same way I did this guy. You notice I just drew a little line there? Well, there's a reason I did that. Now I've just got this little block to cut out, and it saves me a little bit of cutting, saves me a little bit of wood I might use for something else later. If you notice, his face is close, but it's a little more detailed than this guy here. I like this one better. So, I don't know, it's still nice though. And if you notice too, I didn't cut the area out here. The reason I don't do that is because later I'm going to come back with the drill, and I'll show you how this works. But from here we just go over to the scroll saw. Of course you can do this by hand. You could use a pocket knife if you wanted to. It's easy enough to use old techniques to do modern things. And I'll show you real quick. It's a lot of work, but it does work if you're only making one of these. And just trace this along with your knife. And the deeper you go, the closer to being cut out you are. It's a good technique. It is very slow. Don't put your finger on the knife blade. I think that's something I inherited from my grandma. She used to be outside at her deep freezer, and she would have this knife in her hand like this, which is crazy, and she would be banging on the ice with the handle. And I said, well, Grandma, what are you doing? You're going to cut yourself. She says, well, what do you want me to do? Bang on it with the blade? But I showed her how I do it by chipping at it, but she says, you can still get hurt. So she kept on banging the knife with her. Likewise, it's made me not afraid of knives. But you can carve it if you're careful, like I say, by following along, taking your time. Keep putting a gouge in it until you get there. Coincidentally, you can also cut this out carefully with a hacksaw, or many of you may have access to a Dremel or other power tools like that. If you do, please be careful. I'm not advising you to use any of those tools ever. But if you do use them already, then you know who's to stop you, right? So I used to go along and drill out. Drill, drill, drill. Just keep on drilling all the way around until I outline the entire thing in drill lines. And then you can come back very carefully with the drill, set it down low, and just kind of trace it all back out again without pushing up or down. And usually you'll be finished like that, a little hand sanding, and you're done. But let's take it over to the scroll saw. It's the way I do it these days. Okay, so here we are at the scroll saw. I'm probably not going to talk much while I'm cutting. I mean, it's safer if you concentrate on those blades going up and down. But also you probably won't hear me as well. You notice there's a lot of sawdust in our shop already. It's only been open, I think we've been using this one for maybe not even a week now. And we've already popped out hundreds of flutes and oh my gosh, between Jesse and I, we stay crazy, crazy busy. Okay. So that's it for what we're going to carve out with the scroll saw. If you notice part of his little face chipped off over here, not a problem. You can watch how I'm going to sand it and get a better idea of where we're going from here. But first we're going to go ahead and drill out this area, and I'll show you how that works. Okay, so I've got my trusty 3/8, I believe, drill bit here. I think that's my 3/8. No, 5/16. That's the 5/16 I use on most everything. I'll actually be drilling out the hole here. I'll go ahead and do that so you can see what happens, give you a little comparison contrast. I put a piece of wood underneath of whatever I'm drilling on. The reason I do that is there is a nice hole in the bottom of this guy, and this thing does go all the way through it. However, if you poke it all the way through like that, it actually tears out of the back side of this piece of wood, which is not as preferable as having a clean cut. So, see where his leg area is here? Watch those fingers. Let me see. So my little guy here actually chipped. I'm using a really soft wood. Same wood I usually use to make these flute blocks, but I usually make them a little bit larger, as you can tell size difference between these two. This would be like for one of our mini flutes maybe. So he is trying to come apart a little bit, just like a jigsaw puzzle. Do you see that? I'll show you what I'm going to do about that, and then I could probably sell tons of super glue for these people. They just never return my phone calls. Anyway, so I'm just putting that inside of the crack there. I don't know if I've mentioned this to you before, but wherever we have to glue, usually it becomes much more strong than the actual wood itself ever would have been. So I'm going to set this guy down for just a second and let him dry. And while he's drying, I'll show you on my bear. I think I showed you on the last video for making flute blocks, but this is what we do here on the bear. Bears have larger back legs than they do front legs. And likewise, you want to have the back end a little bit bigger than the front end. It's very artistic looking, but it's a nice little bear. What I was talking about is earlier with the wolf is how if you drill on a piece of wood that's expendable, something you don't need to have, that it keeps the back side of it clean when you go all the way through. This guy didn't do so much. He was already kind of rough. I should have sanded him a little bit more. And when it came through, if you notice, let me get my little pointing knife I like to use. Where's that pointing? Here it is. This is my eagle whistle knife. If you notice, he didn't have too much scar tissue right here. It's just because of how thin and small it was, it blew out. Keep that in mind when you're making things like this. The smaller they are, usually the more difficult and time-consuming everything is. We're going to also clean up his face. He kind of looks like an anteater, I think. So we're going to clean that up a little bit in just a second. But now that we have him drilled out, we're going to go back and sand. And the reason that we leave this piece here so large, comparing to the size of his body, I mean, obviously if I wanted to make it for a bigger flute, say for example one of these G's or F sharps here, just to give you an example, I would have actually made his body a little bit larger, like this bear. This bear looks much nicer on top of that flute at his size than this little wolf does. So when you're making a flute block, there's a couple things you want to consider. Number one, the size, making sure that you have the right size for the right flute. And then number two, what type of material you're working with. If you're using a really soft wood like I do, I use Western cedar for a lot of stuff. We make flute making kits out of it, and we make a lot of our flutes. The one I just showed you, we make a lot of flutes out of it. We use it for a lot of things. Display stands, flute stands, which you guys haven't seen on our site, although we have made one flute stand making video. I use this Western cedar for a lot of it. It's got a beautiful color to it and shape and grain, and everything's perfect for making stuff out of. So anyway, this guy, now that he's kind of dried up some, we're going to sand him down, and I'm going to show you the quick and easy way to shape him the way that I shape him. And then if you want to go into the finer detail, please do. I've actually emailed this picture of our schematics of our little wolf design to a few people, and I've seen the wolves that they've carved out have been amazing. Just beautiful stuff. Once again, you know, thousands of flutes. Gotta sleep sometime. So anyway, let's see what he looks like sanding off. Okay, so we'll sand him kind of flat first. Okay, so you know, I've been using these for a long time. You'd think companies like this would approach me and say, hey, you know, you've been using our product for such a long time. Why don't you be a spokesperson for us? Or this stuff right here, my favorite sandpaper, by the way. But they don't. That's right. Everything you see here is blood, sweat, and brows is what builds this stuff. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and take its tail down a little bit. That's probably enough of a power tool. And the rest of it, let's just do by hand here. And like I said, this is just going to be rough. Not something that you have to watch a video on how to do to get it the rest of the way. if you want to make it fancy and finely sanded and all that. Just want to let you see where most of the lines are. Now this is something that you probably won't notice too well unless I point it out. I'm going to shave his ears. See how they're a little bit wide there? I'm going to shave them in a little bit square. I'm going to do it with just a piece of sandpaper. At the same time, I'm actually giving him a neck. Noticed? Pretty handy thing to have unless you come from out west. That's all I'm going to say. Chiropractor joke in there. Okay, so the dude's got a neck now, or at least a neckline, and his ears are a little bit more defined. You notice too, when you use a saw, think of the saw as being a coarser grade of sandpaper. If this sandpaper here is 150 grit, then that saw is probably about a 12 grit. One other thing that you want to consider too when you're finishing any of this, because you're going to get really mad if you don't, is how much tension or pressure to use on different pieces of wood. Like this little tail here, this one's short, so it's pretty strong. But if you push really hard, it'll just break it. The sandpaper is the same way. If you push against that tail with this sandpaper really hard, you're probably going to break it. So, varying amounts of pressure. You need to know where you can use a lot of pressure and where you need to use a little pressure and all that kind of thing. Just take your time. Let's see how he's shaped up. So I still got his tail to clean up a little bit. And that's about as far as I'm going to go, I think, on this little guy. Now, if you notice, he still has some ear design back there, but it's not super defined on the ones we make. Usually they're about this size or a little bit larger, and I'm able to go in and define his ears a little bit. Ears are one of the defining features of a wolf. That and his tail and the shape of his body, you know, is very, very obvious. This is a good start for a flute block for you. Now, like I said, you can go into better depth. If you look on my pictures of the flute blocks we've made, gosh, we have some of these that are very elaborate. But for this, you know, like I say, you don't have to go all out. If you do want to go a step further, one of the other things I like to do is I like to drill or burn a hole between his two front feet here that defines him having more than one giant leg in the front. It gives him two legs. And then the same in the back if you want to. Be mindful of where his tail's located. Like I said, the ears are kind of important. His mouth here got a little bit of detail we could probably do with some sandpaper. Just use the corner of it and stick it inside of his mouth. Go back and forth just a little bit like that, and it will cut a nice clean path for you. I have a friend that carves some of the most beautiful Alaskan carvings out of a type of ivory that's not, you know, from elephants or anything, and he carves stuff like this all the time, so tiny, whereas mine are like twice that size usually. He does such a beautiful job. But anyway, so it gives you an idea of where we're going here. There's a lot more you can do. Like I say, you could go back in with your scroll saw if you have one and clean this up down here and leave this one maybe and clean it up back here a little bit. But personally, to me, that's a flute block. It really is something very unique and simple, and something I think that may help you all get the idea of making more flute blocks. And of course, we're going to put up some more videos and more pictures of other flute blocks that we make in case you have any questions or ideas of some that you're interested in making and think, well, I wonder how you would go about this or that or the other. But you get the gist of it at this point. Anyway, this is Charlie Mato-Toyela signing out, coming from our new flute making wood shop here, and looking forward to come back and give you guys some more videos here really quick. We've got several in store for the next couple of days that we're going to be making. Some of them you guys have been wanting to know about for a long time, and of course we hope you come and visit us again. You can find us on Facebook, like I say, at Blue Bear Arts. Also our website, bluebearflutes.com, and also, as always, you can find us here on YouTube. And we look forward to seeing you again. Take care.